Hi, Raheleh. Welcome to this interview. And we are having one of the most wonderful teachers from Iran. And she is Raheleh. And it's absolutely an honor to have you with me today. So let's start with the interview. And let's start by, having a small introduction about yourself, from where you are, what you do, how long you have been doing, anything that comes to your mind.
Hello, Budi. Good morning from Iran. It's now 8:12 in the morning. I'm Raheleh, and I've been teaching for more than 15 years. I started teaching at the age of 17 in different institutes. Probably I will later on, I will tell you how come I had the ability to start teaching at the age of 17. And then I started to continue my education. I did my BA, MA, and PhD, all English literature. It's been like more than 6 years now. I've been focusing on teaching IELTS, either training candidates and teachers to sit for the IELTS test and teachers to teach IELTS. What I really love about teaching is career development. So that's why I did my TKT modules 1, 2, and 3 in 2017. Then in 2018, I did my CELTA, which I think it was the really good thing to do.
Exactly.
And I'm planning to do more, hopefully after the COVID-19. When the borders are open, I can go to other countries. Yeah.
What actually made you to think that, at that particular moment or that particular day, if we just, go back to that moment when you decided to become a teacher, when you thought that this is something that I'm going to do? Was it an inner calling that you had, or was it something that was, forced upon onto you and you had to do it because you had to do it? How was it like?
Right. Well, to be honest, I started when I started teaching, it was something like, well, I'm just going to teach. It's something that I can do, right? But when I went to my classes and I realized that I can communicate with people and I can teach them things that I know and they don't know, and the way I taught them was really, really interesting for me. So that's why little by little, it became a passion for me.
Right.
It was really enjoyable when you see that people are learning from you. And you're also learning from them at the same time. So it's like a very beautiful interaction that takes place in every single class that you go to, especially when you teach people from other countries.
Right. Yeah. There is a cultural exchange.
Exactly.
It is always interesting to know somebody else's culture, because you start comparing in your head. It's like, you have a certain amount of notes in your head about your own things, and then you start observing somebody else's, and you also feel the minute differences and also the major similarities. I mean, after all, we all are human beings, and there are going to be certain things which are universal, and it's always, so much fun and interesting to know, oh, okay, so you are from that country, but still we think so similar in those lines. So it's always interesting. So now that you told that you always enjoyed becoming a teacher, that brings to this next question, which I needed to ask you, since you are already a very, very experienced teacher. Do you think that teaching is something that could be learned only? I mean, if you get a training from certain institutions or certain courses, and then you become a teacher, is it going to be like that? Or is it something that comes naturally to a person? I mean, that instincts are already there, and he just needs to, fine tune that those instincts and then become a great teacher? Or is it something like a person doesn't have any quality to become a teacher as a human being, but then he starts learning, observing, going through different modules of courses, and then he becomes a good teacher? How is it, in your opinion?
Well, to me, I believe it was a combination of both.
Mhm.
And probably it's the same probably for some people as well. You see, sometimes you just have you have that thing inside you to become to become a teacher,
Mhm.
but because you never train it or you're never aware of it, you
Mhm.
don't do anything about it, so
Mhm.
it just stays there.
Yeah.
I myself was not aware of the fact that I could be a teacher one day.
Mhm.
But when I started teaching, I realized that this is something I've been made for. And
Yeah.
this is what I really am, a
Yeah.
teacher.
Yeah.
I also believe that being an introvert and extrovert also helps in your decision
Mhm.
along the process, because it's very difficult when you're an introvert and you want to become a teacher.
Mhm.
And this is where you really have to be trained for that, because
Mhm.
especially when you are teaching languages, it's all about expression, body languages. And
Yeah.
imagine you're a reserved person, shy, you don't want to let things out. Okay. I
Yeah.
find this quite a bit difficult. And this is where I believe training comes in.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
you have the ability, and with the help of the training,
Mm.
courses like CELTA would definitely help you out in these situations, I believe.
Mhm. Yes, I agree to that. There are certain things, just like I mentioned, I think that we need certain fine tunings, and it is very important to have, those proper training and guidance to become a teacher. But then ultimately, it is something from inside that you actually start enjoying. So for how many years total you have been teaching, and how has been the journey so far?
Well, as I said, I started teaching at the age of 17.
Hmm.
And the reason behind this is because we were living in England. And when we came back, when I started going to my secondary school, it was
Hmm.
the last year I had to sit for the entrance exam where we go to university.
Hmm.
And I had a teacher who told me that why don't you start teaching in an institute? So I started doing that,
Hmm.
but it was like for very little money, and just because I enjoyed it.
Right.
But then when I did my BA in one of the accredited universities of Iran,
Hmm.
UT, um, one of my lecturers introduced me to a very famous institute, and then I started teaching there. Then it was
Hmm.
from then on that I
Hmm.
decided that, I love this
Yeah.
job. I can
Right.
do a lot with that. All I need to do is like learn a lot different methods. I would read articles. I would do anything just to teach my students in new ways. That
Mhm.
new ways and updated methods were really important to me, and it still
Right.
is.
Right.
But then I did my MA, and my first MA I did it in Iran. By my second MA, I went to England, Sheffield. I did it. Then I came back. I did my PhD,
Mhm.
and
From Iran?
during during all these years, I've been love teaching people, because I teach literature at the same time, general English and IELTS as well.
Mhm.
Um,
What are the challenges that you faced while teaching? Something that really comes to your mind as the most difficult challenge that you faced while you were a teacher, and how did you overcome that?
you know. When you talk about the challenges, the first thing that comes to my mind was that when I started teaching, I was, a very young girl with lots of ambitions. And I was like, when I went to my classes, most of my students were older than me.
Mm.
So that was one of my biggest challenge. I couldn't really tell them what to do and what not to do. And
Mm.
because we've got, I had moved from a Western culture to an Eastern culture. You see,
Mm.
in Eastern culture, respect is like number one. You can't really
Exactly.
tell the person who is older than you what to do.
No, exactly.
So I had to be very careful and delicate in how I would communicate with my students. I
Mm.
had lots of challenges there, but
Mm.
because they liked me and the way I taught them was somehow fun for them,
Mm.
they didn't mind. One thing that I believe that I had to do every session was to study so much so that any question these people had, I
Mm.
would answer them. You know, I was a young girl, so I thought that knowledge is the ultimate answer to all my problems and
Yeah.
challenges in my
Mm.
classes.
Mm.
Um, but as this went on,
Mm.
one of the challenges that I'm dealing with nowadays
Mm.
is because I'm teaching IELTS and focus on this particular
Mm.
exam, is that people come to you
Mm.
and there are only 30 days left
Yeah.
to their exam, and they
Mhm.
say, right, I've got 30 days. Can you tell me what I should study?
Mm.
Because I need to get 7. And you're like, 7?
Mm.
Not even 6? Because I believe that in the public band descriptors, there is a big gap between
Mm.
6 and 7.
Yeah, exactly.
So you definitely have to talk to them and talk them through the process, telling them that if you really want to get a good mark, you need to study at least for 6 or 7 hours a day.
Mm.
But another problem is that they don't have time.
Yep. Yep. That's a challenge, and I think that in my case, I also teach IELTS to many students, and that this is what I do actually. And the problem that I face mostly is that many of my future students who come and approach me, they are not at that proficiency level where they should be. Maybe they are just a little bit ahead of a beginner. They are not even at the intermediate level, right? So it's like A2, something like that. Not A1, maybe A2, but not B1 also. Or even if they are B1, it's not going to be, helpful if they are facing the speaking module of IELTS, or if they want to write something, then it is going to be a mess for sure. And these are the skills that needs time to develop. Now, they have scheduled their IELTS date. They come to me and they say that they have like 2 months, 1 month even, and they even tell me that you know what, I just need guidance with my speaking skills and my writing skills. I can crack the reading and listening part by myself. So can you just tell me what should I do? Can you just correct my papers and help me out like that? Now, the first thing that comes to my mind is how should I communicate and tell him or her that this is not how it is going to work. I'm not here to make miracles happen, and you are not at that particular level where I can pull you out and bring you to a 7, because you are somewhere around like 4, 4.5, something like that. From 4 to 7, it's like I have to start with the basics of English with you, and from there only I can move ahead, and at certain point of time we can think of appearing for IELTS. So this becomes a real challenge for me, because I don't want to discourage or disappoint them. I don't want to be that person who told those bad words to them and show the mirror. So how do you deal with such a situation in your case? And I hope I guess that you also face the same thing, right?
Definitely,
Mhm.
definitely. Because people just want to go and continue with their further studies, and
Mhm.
they don't. They think that, as you said, you're there
Mhm.
for magic or for something miracle to happen.
Mhm.
But when it comes to language, it takes time
Exactly.
and practice,
Mhm.
and practice makes progress.
Mhm.
So when practice is not there, there is no progress then. All
Mhm.
right. One thing before I talk about this is that you said our students usually say, oh, when it comes to listening and reading, I can do that. And I'm
Yeah,
like, no, you can't do that. Because
exactly.
I personally believe that listening is one of the most difficult skills in IELTS.
Yes.
Because when you sit for the IELTS test, you see the questions, all right? And then you're supposed to listen to something.
Mm-hmm.
While you're listening, you need to decode it in order to
Exactly.
understand what is on the question paper.
Mm-hmm.
And all these happens in a matter of like less than a minute, I would say,
Right.
right? Less than a minute.
Right.
Then after that, after the decoding, you need to write something down. And that
Mm-hmm.
writing is also important because you
Mm-hmm.
need to take care of the spelling and grammar at the same time.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
But you have time for writing and sometimes for speaking. You just use those linkers and markers in order to buy some time for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But in listening, everything happens in a matter of seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So listening is difficult, believe me.
Yeah.
But our students tend to say, listening, I can do that. That's
Mm-hmm.
easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I always explain this to them.
Mm. I mean, if you want to learn a new language, because I just had recently I had a student who wanted to enroll with me, and he had appeared for IELTS twice before, and he scored something like 6.5. The first time he scored 6.5, the next time he scored 6. So it was, in a in the opposite way, that he was in a mess. So he told me that I already know all the modules. I know what is the structure of the test. So I just want help with my writing skills and my speaking skills. I don't want help with these two, reading and listening. I told him, you know what, to learn a new language, the first thing that you do is to listen to that language. That is the first thing. Just like a baby, the baby doesn't, just comes out of the womb and starts speaking. It's not possible. The thing that he needs to do or she needs to do is to listen to the words that is going around in his or her environment. So from there, he starts, developing the ability to speak. So the first thing we need to do is to listen, then we speak a little bit, and from there we go on to write. And it's a process, and it's a natural process. We cannot interfere with Mother Nature. So eventually he was convinced. He was in a state of mind, and I could see that his eyes were moving, all around the place. So I could tell that he is thinking very hard, but I'm glad to have him as a student now. Okay, so that brings us to the next question. What motivated you to not only become a teacher, but also to you know bring students out of their comfort zones? Because there are people who are, let me try to put this question like this, that you have a student who is an adult, and he thinks of himself as a very important person. Maybe he is in his professional life, but somehow or the other he is compelled to speak in English, which he is not very comfortable with. And he has a problem, like, he thinks of himself that I have reached a stage in my life where a new language won't bring me, any major difference. So to that person, how do you impart your knowledge to him? What exactly is your approach towards that person?
So you're basically asking me if a student is unwilling to speak in class or take part in a class, how
Yes.
would I encourage that person?
Yes, because of his ego, maybe because of his pride, because of his age,
Mm.
because there are many factors, that could prevent him, uh, prevent that person to come out of that zone in which he has built around himself. Uh, Normally, to a young student, in my belief, if the person is quite young, then we can make him do certain things. But if the person is after, a certain age, and he has some kind of, he's holding some kind of an important position, then it becomes a little bit challenging as a teacher to tell that person, you know what, this is not your office, this is my office, this is my classroom, and you have to do what I need, what I'm telling you to do. So how do you deal with that kind of situation?
I believe the questions you asked me all go down to the topics that we usually talk about in training, classroom management, and yeah, classroom management, I would say.
Yeah.
One of the things that I would ask my students to do for the first lesson, no matter how old they are, because not only I teach IELTS, but I also do beginners as well. I mean, teach beginners. I've got 2 foreign students whom I'm dealing with, and I teach them from the very beginning, all right? The first thing I ask them is to talk about their profile, create their profile. So there's the picture of them, and I want them to tell me about their interests, their likes, their dislikes, what they like to do in their free time. Many things that I think that it's important in order for me to have authority on my over my class and my students.
Yeah.
The reason for this is that usually if there's a student who is shy, I'm just giving this as an example, and doesn't really want to talk, even when I put them in different groups with different people, again, that person is shy and doesn't want to talk to others. I would look at the profile that they have given me. If I find that there is a movie they like, or they like to listen to music, I would go to them after the class, or even if it's online, I would ask them to stay, and then I would talk to them by introducing a kind of application so that they would work from. Right? But sometimes this is not to do with, let's say, being shy. Sometimes it's to do with their ego, or because they are having a very important job, and they are unfortunate to be in your class because because they need to learn something, or they need a certificate. All right. What I would do is that I would, because I know their job, probably from their profile, that they have written something on it, I would try to put that person as the leader of that group.
Okay.
So by giving that responsibility to them, it seems that, hey, you are also doing something important in my class as well. You are part of the, like, you are TA, teacher assistants in this class. I think when you give them some roles to do, and they believe that they have to achieve it, but just to show that, hey, I know what I'm doing. Well, it has worked for me. So, but I believe that it is the teacher who should motivate the students.
Exactly.
I know that there are some interior motivations, but there are also the exterior motivation as well. So I believe I, as a teacher, have the responsibility to encourage them.
Right, exactly.
I just have to try different methods.
Nice. Absolutely. We can only try as a teacher, and use all sort of techniques, whatever we have learned to become a teacher, and from there on, it's just it depends on the student also to a certain amount. Now, this brings me to the next question about the TKT that we were talking about before the start of the interview. What exactly it is, what are the modules? Could you just explain? Because if somebody wants to become a teacher, maybe they could enroll or maybe contact you and know more from you then.
All right. Well, as I was telling you, I had a student and I was talking to last night. She was very much worried about the market out there, the teaching industry. She was saying that all her lecturers are telling her that it's not really suitable or appropriate at this time in order to, study for the TEFL. or English as a second language, any languages, she was saying. She was really worried about this. And I was telling her that no matter how many teachers are out there trying to teach different people, but if you are the best or one of the best ones, there is always a place for you. You just have to know that what you're good at and focus on that particular thing, because you can't really be good at everything.
Right.
Even in teaching IELTS, I would say that what is your specialty? Is your specialty in teaching speaking, writing? Which of the 4 skills are you really good at in teaching? Focus on that one. And then try to focus on the other ones if you have time. Then I suggested her to study for the TKT and sit for the modules. When it comes for TKT, although there are 70 countries that accept such certificate, but first of all, it's a lifetime certificate. And I believe anybody like me who has not studied TEFL in university, and I just went for the CELTA and these kind of modules, but my major was literature, so it was different from TEFL. So I suggested her to sit for the TKT, which there are like 3 modules, module 1, 2, and 3. It tells you basically how you should teach different skills. It talks about the grammar as well. There is also a module, which is module 3, about classroom management, which I believe is really important. And one thing, Bodhi, that I forgot to mention when you were talking about somebody who has a big ego or somebody who is shy, how would you manage the class? That is not only the profile, a student profile that I asked them to do, but there is also the rules and regulations that I need to talk and negotiate with my students during the first lessons of the class. Because when we have the rules set down for ourselves, we either can pin it at the top of that social media or the platform that we have, or we can just stick it on the wall of the class, so that every time there is a problem, we would say, you just point it out. That's it. You don't need to even talk or argue about it, because you know that how many students love to come to you with beautiful excuses that you have never even thought about.
Right. We have all been through that process and journey, right? Okay, so now the next question that I would like to ask you is that as a teacher, and due to the pandemic, there has been a paradigm shift for as far as the method of teaching is concerned. So most people are now turning towards technology. We are here because of technology together. So how do you see this? Is it turned for the good, or is it something that has actually affected people who have crossed a certain amount of age? Somebody who is maybe in their 60s, and they are not very conversant with technology, and they are a wonderful teacher. They have been teaching all their life, and so today suddenly they have to turn online, they have to sit for a Zoom meeting. And I believe that it's not going to be easy for them, because this is something that they are not very accustomed to do. So in this regard, or even as this technological revolution has brought everything so close, today we have access to anybody and everybody in the world. So this has its pluses and minuses also. So how do you see this? Do you think it's for better method, or is it going to be, is it more challenging?
Well, as for the pandemic, I think for me was somehow a kind of opportunity to sit at home and update myself. All right. Yep. Because this was the time that a lot of free webinars was conducted and held by Cambridge and Macmillan and Oxford universities.
Mm.
So, and I tried to participate in every single one of them as much as I could.
Mm.
Another opportunity for me was that I'm just talking about the pluses at the moment, and then I will talk about the negative points as well.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing for me was that I had time to have all my classes. You know, no longer did I have to drive to different places or institutes in order to teach my students.
Yep.
All I had to do was to sit at the table behind my laptop and start working and teaching. But in parentheses, I have to say, a lot of preparation had to be made.
Mm.
Whereas when you teach in person, you don't need to do that much effort, because this time you really need to make beautiful slides.
Yeah.
You have to work on your PowerPoint in order to make your students understand what you're teaching,
Yeah.
you know, in order to create a better communication.
Mm-hmm.
These were the good points. And also there were so many courses that I wanted to take,
Mm-hmm.
like EMI, like English as a medium of instruction, which when you do it, you can teach in a university.
Mm-hmm.
I always wanted to do it, but unfortunately I didn't have time. And this made a lot of room for me in order to sit in my room and study.
Mm-hmm.
And the negative points, you see, is that in some countries, especially mine, there isn't enough access, or there isn't good access of internet for everyone. Not everybody is privileged enough to have this access. So especially the old people, but there were also some very young people who were affected by this. And I know bad things happened to them because they believe that it's the end of the world, and they can't really catch up with the other students as they do not have that access to internet.
Right.
So I would say that it had its good points and bad points. But I believe one thing was that a lot of people at the moment are trying to learn about technology.
Right.
Something that they didn't care about probably in the previous years.
Yeah. Even 2 years back, it's something like,
Absolutely agree.
yeah, it's absolutely, it's something like, it's shoved down your throat. You have to upgrade yourself, otherwise it's a question of survival now.
Exactly.
So that brings us to, okay, now with this, do you think that with this change of mode of teaching, does it hamper or does it affect the quality of teaching? Because in my opinion, suppose you are teaching in a physical classroom where the students are right in front of you, it has its own charm, it has its own advantages. Then again, teaching online has its own advantages as well. So compared to these two situations where you are in a classroom and you are online with one person at a time, or maybe a small group of students, do you think this is better, or how does the quality of education get affected because of this?
Well, no doubt that face-to-face classes are really, really great. And I'm looking forward to have them back. But at this time of the pandemic, because I mean, in my country, the situation is like, again, we're in the lockdown. Yeah. And I know many other countries are also in lockdown as well.
In India, it's quite bad. It's really, but I mean, just in the recent past, things are slowly moving for the betterment, but we have struggled for the second wave was absolute disaster for us. I mean,
I understand.
The first thing was the first wave last year. It was a complete lockdown. Oh my goodness. We all were put behind in a house, just like that. With a snap of a finger, it was decided that we are going for a lockdown. There was not enough time for people who were in another city and they had to come back to the home. So it was just like that. So it had its own disadvantages. The second wave that we had this end of February or March, early March, my goodness, so we have struggled a lot and many people have died. So now the situation is getting a little better. In the last 2 weeks, maybe the death rate has come down, the number of people affected has come down. So yeah, I know what you're talking. I mean, I can relate to the situation that you are explaining.
So I guess although the situation at the moment, the situation is somehow doesn't let us to have face-to-face classes. So even when they call me and ask for face-to-face classes, I would just say a big no and say, sorry, it's for your own good and my own good.
Exactly.
It would be nice if we could have a class online.
Mhm.
But the big, the big problem is that lots of people are not really or have not been exposed to good way of teaching online. This online teaching, I believe, that has its own methods,
Yeah,
do's and don'ts.
yeah.
Whereas in face-to-face classes, I think those do's and don'ts are a bit easier, I believe.
Mhm. Because the person is right in front of you, so it comes naturally.
And we have been somehow adapted to that situation. But this one is the new normal, and it's not yet normal as well.
Yeah.
So we really have to, we still we're struggling to find the best way, because you have to deal with children differently from those of adults.
Right, right, right. So that brings to the last leg of this interview, and I would just like to ask you, what message would you like to convey to all those teachers who are still thinking hard to become a teacher or not, as you have already, explained to your student last night, and to the entire world, any message that you would like to share with anybody who is watching this particular interview on YouTube in the near future?
Well, I think if you're a teacher and you really want to be a good one, the best thing to do is to go after career development. I would definitely ask my students or my colleagues to go and check the Cambridge site, cambridge.org. When they go there, there is that career development chart. And then you can see where you stand and what steps you're supposed to take in order to get to the top of the chart. Because I believe that this is the only way that you can update yourself and try to communicate with your students as best as possible.
Right. And anything for the entire world, just a general message to all the viewers who may not be a teacher, who is maybe a student, just an English student, and maybe in the future they will think about becoming a teacher. So the message to the entire world, anything that you have to share, you need to share, you have something in your mind.
Well, I think my message is just do what you like. Not because you want to make money, not because you have to do it, because when you do something that you like, little by little, it's like the nature allows you to grow with it. And I think enjoying what you do is the best thing as the ultimate answer to everything.
Exactly. I agree with that completely. Yeah, exactly. It was nice talking to you, Raheleh, and I hope we stay in touch, and maybe we can do a mastermind call with some other expert tutors also. So that is what I plan to do, to have a panel discussion with all the teachers around the world whom I've already interviewed. So we can have a group discussion, and maybe we can ponder upon some more important topics, not in the general fashion, but we'll stay in touch. I'll send you an email. Please do share your email ID with me. This is something that I need. So I'll just stop the recording here.